Coming up on the Get Lean, Eat Clean podcast.
I've been doing this for so long, decades, that when I first started my practice, I was like, okay, everybody's going to eat the same way. This is the anti-inflammatory way. And this is how everybody should be eating. And some people were thriving. I mean, like really thriving. And other people weren't. And I'm like, what is the deal? Why is, these people not thriving? And I started to realize that everybody should not be eating the same way. Just like every diet book that comes out or a food philosophy lifestyle comes out, and everybody does it. And your neighbor who's like lost, 42 pounds, but you've lost nothing, right? You don't feel better. You feel worse. It's because we are not designed to eat the same way. So I created FoodFrame, which is my methodology. And I firmly believe, because I see it every day, that people should be eating according to their current health status.
Hello, and welcome to the Get Lean, Eat Clean podcast. I'm Brian Grin, and I'm here to give you actionable tips to get your body back to what it once was 5, 10, even 15 years ago. Each week, I'll give you an in-depth interview with a health expert from around the world to cut through the fluff and get you long-term sustainable results. This week, I interviewed functional nutritionist and certified autoimmune coach, Risa Groux. Risa looks at the root cause using functional nutrition guidelines, blood and stool tests, and knows that weight loss is a side effect of wellness. We discussed her personal health journey with autoimmune, along with Risa's favorite lab tests to use for her clients, healing inflammation in the gut, problems with mainstream self-care products, her experience working with PGA golfer Fred Couples, Risa's detox protocol, and much, much more. Really enjoyed my interview with Risa. I know you will too. Thanks so much for listening and enjoy the show. All right, welcome to the Get Lean, Eat Clean podcast. My name is Brian Grin, and I have Risa Groux on. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Brian. It's great to be here.
Great to have you on. And I know you've originally from is it the West Coast?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, originally from LA, and have my practice in Newport Beach, and I've lived there for 30 years. And that's home.
Yeah, and functional nutrition, certified autoimmune coach. What sort of sparked your interest to go down that path?
I'd always been interested in health and diet. And, in my house, I grew up, my mom was always trying to lose 5 to 10 pounds constantly, and my grandma, all the women in my family were just all about the good foods and the bad foods. And I always thought the good foods were tasted okay, but the bad foods tasted really good. So I was very confused. Like, why is this that, we're always depriving ourselves, and why aren't the men doing this? Right. Or it just was I had such a crazy relationship with food growing up. And so I, of course, adopted that diet culture, and every diet book that came out, I went on it. And I was trying to lose 3 to 5 pounds perpetually. And I had this really bad relationship with food, right? It was all or nothing. It was a lot of deprivation. And then, it was just a crazy bad relationship with food. So then I ended up going a totally different route. And I was director of sports marketing for the Ducks, their second year in Anaheim, the NHL team. And then I was reading always nutrition books on the side and trying to learn about medicine. And so when I raised my kids, I was just, giving them all real food. I never gave them any processed food or sugar for a long time. And I watched what happened, and my kids were not really sick, and the other kids were really sick, and all that stuff. And then I decided I wanted to go back to school, and I became a clinical nutritionist, and then started studying functional medicine. In the meantime, I had an autoimmune disease myself. After I conceived my daughter, no problem. Like, we basically got married, looked at each other, had a baby, and then I could not conceive my second one at all. Like, I kept having miscarriages, or I just couldn't conceive. And I really got the frustration. So I started to go down that path. I tested myself for all kinds of stuff that it could possibly be. And then I went to the fertility specialist finally. And he's like, he took my blood and he said, you got a thyroid that's underachieving. Here's your script. And I'm like, what script, for what? And he's like, you got to take this medication. I said, for how long? He said, every day. And I said, no, for how long? And he goes, for the rest of your life. And it was that day that I walked out and I went, I don't understand. Why is it that they're giving me a synthetic medication to mimic something that my body should be producing on its own? And why are we not asking why is it not producing it? So that really started my health journey. And then I finally was able to conceive. I realized that I had this gene mutation called MTHFR, which is very, very common. I test every patient for it. Pretty much everybody has it. About 90% of the population has it. And it means that you can't methylize your B12 and or your folate, your B9. So that affects pregnancy, but it also affects so many things like brain function, ADD, autism, bipolar, schizophrenia, headaches, migraines, anxiety, depression. So I took this B vitamin, I did a couple other things, and next thing you know, I had a totally normal, healthy pregnancy. And shortly thereafter, I was diagnosed with Hashimoto's, which is when you have an autoimmune disease that you have antibodies that are attacking your own thyroid gland. And I'm like, okay, why is this happening? Nobody's asking why. So I went down that road. I created the list of root causes of why could this be happening, and eventually started using it in practice.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. And you hear autoimmune a lot, and a lot of times I think people just think like you can't necessarily like overcome it naturally.
Yes.
What would you say to that as far as reversing autoimmune conditions and things like that?
So some of them I have not been able to reverse or heard about any reversal. But there are other ones that we have. I, for instance, have been able to reverse my antibody production to Hashimoto's. Now, I call that reversing my autoimmunity. I don't have antibodies that are attacking my thyroid gland anymore, at least non-detectable. So we've been able to do that quite a bit. I have people who have had rheumatoid arthritis that we've been able to reverse all symptoms. So is that clinically reversing rheumatoid arthritis? I would think so, right? If we're not having the ANA markers anymore and the patient's not feeling any joint pain, I think that's probably what I would classify as successful reversal. So I've had a numerous amount of cases because autoimmunity at the bottom root of it is basically a high antibody production, right? This is our own defense mechanism that we all create when we think that there's an enemy in the body. And so it starts to attack it. It could be a gland, a tissue, or an organ. So whatever your autoimmune disease is, it's going to go after that. And now, doctor will give you a squirt gun and say, here, let's put out the fire, or let's just manage the fire. Right. For me, philosophy and in functional medicine and functional nutrition, I'm going to give you a fire hose. I mean, let's get that inflammation out. What's causing that antibody production? Why are we seeing a rapid increase in autoimmunity from kids? I see young kids with autoimmunity. This is ridiculous, right? I didn't even know what autoimmune disease was when I was growing up, and I think my grandparents had Hashimoto's, but nobody ever diagnosed it. So I think we really need to focus on root causes of why we're increasing our rates of autoimmunity.
And are there certain lab tests, I think you mentioned briefly, that you sort of stand by that you use with most of your patients?
Yes, I do. Everyone I work with, I do a very extensive, comprehensive bio screen. So I'm looking at all 4 markers of blood sugar. I'm looking at all 9 markers of thyroid, which the conventional medicine typically orders about 1 and 3 if we're lucky. And then I do a full iron panel. I do inflammation markers, which is crazy to say this, but people don't test for that. Conventional medicine doctors do not test for inflammation. And we know inflammation is the driver of disease. It's one of the 2 major foundational issues that cause the body to either optimize the health or hinder the health. So I do that. I do white blood cells, you name it. I'm getting a pretty thorough test. When I get that back, I have a good idea of where to go and what is going on. In addition, I test for a stool test that shows 84 pathogens because the gut is the other component of those 2 foundational issues. It's systemic inflammation, which we know is the driver of disease, and the other is gut health, which is just everything, right? So, and our immunity lives predominantly in our gut. So I'm not good at the guessing part. I'll leave that to conventional medicine, but I like to know, what do we got? We have an overgrowth of good guys or bad guys, or what is it? What's going on in there?
Right. I've been doing this podcast for a long time, and I feel like gut health has come up more and more over the last, I've been doing it for like 5 years. And I think that it's still going to be advancing and progressing where like most of the disease is coming from some type of gut issue that's going on. either, leaky
Mhm.
gut or whatever. I'm sure you see this. Is there like a common theme that you see with a lot of people that come as far as, like gut health?
I would say probably 8 to 9 out of 10 people who walk in my door have leaky gut.
Okay.
You have to remember we only have one layer of epithelial cells in the intestinal lining, right? We have 7 on the outside. So it's really fragile. Above that, we have villi. Remember that from biology? That protects our epithelial cells. And then above that, we have a mucosal lining. And that mucosal lining is so critical because it really is its own ecosystem. It helps to repopulate and colonize all these good bacterias. And so that's what keeps us healthy. That's what keeps us thin. That's what, that microbiome is really what creates a healthy body.
Yeah, and like that villi and the mucosal barrier, it's like so many things can affect it, things that we're not even aware of, right? Like obviously antibiotics, our environment. So like, you could seem like you're eating healthy and doing the right things, but there still could be even stress can affect it.
For sure, exactly. And glyphosate, which is, the pesticide that is on all conventional foods. So any restaurant you go to, you're pretty much having glyphosate in your meal. I mean, I
It's
think glyphosate is one of the major problems with our health, the breakdown of our health, and the obesity epidemic, and it's really a big factor that we don't really talk about that much.
yeah. Um, Glyphosate with a side of seed oils.
Exactly, it's a perfect combination. You want to get sick and fat? That's exactly what you do.
Yeah, right. And it's interesting because my wife and I cook for ourselves like pretty much every night. And I honestly think like if more people did that, like it could, and I'm curious to know your thoughts on that, like a lot of disease and just like weight loss or just weight problems in general would go away.
For sure, because as I mentioned, we've got inflammation, right, as the driver disease. So if we're in an inflamed state, I always say to people, if you've got a raging fire in the basement of your house, it is raging, you got flames going, you're calling the fire department. I mean, it's bad. And you've got somebody on the second floor going, "Hey, Brian, can you help me change the light bulb?" And you're like, "What? I've got this raging fire." And after the fire's out, you'd be happy to change the light bulb, right?
Right.
But, what I'm saying is when we're in an inflamed state and we want to lose weight, the body's like, are you kidding me? We hold on to all of our resources when we're in an inflamed state. So it's not focusing on losing weight. It's focusing on maintaining what it has because it's in a crisis mode. It's got a raging fire in the basement. So yes, I think those things that contribute to the raging fire are chemicals, toxins, perfumes, fragrances. I mean, that is in every candle in every house. It's every Febreze that's in every, my hairdresser. I was like, "Do you mind if I take out the Febreze plugins while I'm here?" And so he goes, "Oh no, is it a problem?" And I started educating him, and he's like, "I got rid of them all over my house and the salon and everything because people don't realize it, right?" And we're just, mouthwash is another one. We change our full on microbiome in our mouth because we're just killing all that bacteria. So it's, things that we were just so used to thinking it's good for us, and we go to a great restaurant, we're not eating fish that's wild. I don't care how much you spend, you're unless it says it on the menu, but
Right.
we're not eating grass fed and grass finished beef. So those things do matter. They compile.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it adds up over time, right? I always tell it's not about being perfect because I think the environment that we live in right now is just like you can't avoid everything, right? And I think part of it too is just like now if we go out to dinner, like I really don't order fish because I just don't know where it's coming from. And I'll have conventional meat because cows, the way they digest is a little bit different than like getting chicken or pork when you're out. That's a whole nother conversation. But yeah, I think you can take these steps and not worry about being perfect because then you can just get stressed out that you have these environmental factors that are every day and you have to sort of live your life through them. But what are like some of the foundational things that you find that you work with individuals on, whether it's food or stress or activity?
Gosh, I work with everybody pretty much on the same foundational issues. So I'm going to decrease your systemic inflammation and increase your good gut health. And what's interesting about that, Brian, is when they come into my office and they have a myriad of symptoms, right? They might have headaches, they might have constipation, or they have chronic diarrhea, or they have, itching or hives or whatever it is, right? And weight loss is, pretty much on everybody's list. But whatever those things are, once I detox them, the first thing I do is put them on my detox, and I'll detox them for 2 weeks. And almost like a ton of stuff just falls by the wayside there. And that's helpful for me because I know what their liver is clogged and congested. Once we clean out that liver, and let's say the headaches go away. It may be because we took out gluten, dairy, sugar, alcohol. It may be because we cleaned out, their liver or whatever it is. But a lot of those things go by the wayside. Then I really know at that point, what do we have left with, right? And that's where I start with everybody. And again, by the time we finish the detox, I get the results from their blood test. I get the results from their stool test, and I know exactly which way to go. I'm not really good at playing darts with the lights off, and I cannot see the target. So I want all the lights on, and I want to fully be able to see where we're going. And every individual is different. So, but I work with a myriad of things. I've seen many miracles in my office, which is super cool. I love watching people heal. It's just the coolest thing.
Yeah, maybe what's one story that comes to mind of someone that's healed?
So I have so many, but maybe one that might be relevant to you guys is I worked with Freddie Couples, the PGA golfer, who is just an amazing guy. And he called me and said he wanted to lose 20 pounds before the Masters. And I'm like, okay, no problem. Slam dunk. That's easy. Right. So he comes into my office
well, how much time did he have? Masters is in April. So
yeah, he came, I think, to me in February.
Okay.
So he ended up losing 20 pounds. So that was because I feel like weight loss is a side effect of wellness. So I don't put anybody on a weight loss program. I put them on a wellness program. And next thing you know, they're losing weight. Because as I said, once you put the fire out in the basement, we're able to let go of things we don't need, right? We're not in that emergency state where we have to hold on to all our resources. We can let them go. We don't need them. So he came in and he said, I said, tell me about the back pain. I know you've been famous for back pain for, oh God, as long as I knew. And he said, oh yeah, I go to this doctor and that doctor in this country for that doctor. And he travels with his physical therapist, and no matter what he does, and sometimes it's worse. And I said, well, on a scale from 1 to 10, how bad is your pain on a regular basis? 10 being excruciating, you cannot function. He said, our daily basis is a 7 or an 8. Depending on how much swings the golf club. Right. So I said, okay. So I put him on my detox. He came in. So I said to him, listen, has anybody tested you for inflammation markers? And he said, I don't think so. So I said, I'm going to order a bunch of tests. He goes, order whatever you need. So he comes in the next week after a week on my detox. I said, what's your number? He said, I'm a 4. I said, awesome. And he was 100% compliant. He came out in the following week at the end of the detox, and I said, what's your number? He said, I'm a 1 or a 0. He's like, I've never been out of pain like this before. So we got back his inflammation markers, and they were through the roof. And this is a guy who lives, both of his homes are on golf courses, and he works on golf courses, and golf courses are treated with chemicals, lots of chemicals. So he's breathing these in and day out. He also had smell sensitivity. So he said every time he got into an Uber with some scented air fresheners, he would get headaches. So he had frequent headaches from fragrances and stuff. So I knew already his liver was congested. I knew we had some cleanup to do. And sure enough, every time I saw him thereafter, he was a 0 or 1. And he lost the 20 pounds on the Masters. I think they even talked about it at one of the tournaments. But anyway, he was awesome. He was out of pain. He was amazing. And that was just super cool to see because we only just gave him food. That's all we gave him, real food and, supplements that contain nutrients. So it was amazing.
Yeah. And you talk about on your website, this RGN detox? Is that what you're typically putting people on?
Yeah, I do it 3 to 4 times a year, and I start pretty much everybody with it for the first 2 weeks while I'm gathering all your labs. but it starts to quell the inflammation. You're eating, it's not a starvation diet. Eat when you're hungry, don't when you're not, but you're having 2 collagen shakes a day. And I'm all about protein, fat, and fiber. So we're focusing on protein, fat, and fiber. And then you're eating meals, protein, fat, and fiber, a little bit of sweet potatoes, good fats. And next thing you know, people feel amazing. Their energy is better. Their skin is better. Everybody tells me I'm less puffy, bloated. I have people who have been constipated for 30, 40 years, and they're like, oh my God, I go every day. Like, it's crazy. So I love to watch people heal, and that's a really good way to do it. Of course, you'll lose weight, but it's not a weight loss program. It's a wellness program, but everybody loses weight. And that's why I know they like to do it. But I don't say this is a weight loss program, even though everybody loses weight. I'm happy to offer your listeners 10% off the Detox. And it's just amazing. It's amazing. It's amazing to feel that good and to watch people feel, just to watch the transformation is amazing.
Yeah, for sure. We'll put a link in the show notes, and then we'll have some type of discount code that I'll put as well when this goes out. So appreciate that.
Sure, absolutely.
And let's talk a little about your FoodFrame. I thought this was interesting, just looking on your website. Talk a little bit about that. It looks like you have sort of different categories that you'll use regarding the FoodFrame.
Yeah. So, I've been doing this for so long, decades, that when I first started my practice, I was like, okay, everybody's going to eat the same way. This is the anti-inflammatory way. And this is how everybody should be eating. And some people were thriving. Like really thriving. And other people weren't. And I'm like, what is the deal? Why is, these people not thriving? And I started to realize that everybody should not be eating the same way. Just like every diet book that comes out, or a food philosophy lifestyle comes out, and everybody does it. And your neighbor who's like lost, 42 pounds, but you've lost nothing, right? You don't feel better. You feel worse. It's because we are not designed to eat the same way. So I created FoodFrame, which is my methodology. And I firmly believe, because I see it every day, that people should be eating according to their current health status. Meaning, if you have diabetes or prediabetes, you should be probably either on keto if you're suitable for that, but not everybody is, or paleo. If you've got IBS, or you've got SIBO, small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, I'm going to recommend the low FODMAP program for you. And then if you've got autoimmunity, you're coming into my office with raging antibodies, I'm going to put you on the AIP, which is the autoimmune protocol. And that is a 30 to 90 day protocol. And then I make my recommendations after that. So I really firmly believe that every body is different, and we should be eating according to our current health status.
I like that. I like that because I think, like, I was the same way a little bit. Like, you come into the health arena and, it's like you just feel like what works for you might not necessarily work for someone else.
Exactly.
And sometimes there's a little bit of self-experimentation around that.
For sure. This kind of cuts the guessing out, because I know that if you're in an active state of IBS, right, that just basically means you have inflammation in your intestinal lining. There are certain foods that are going to aggravate that inflammation. So those are the foods that we stay away from. Now, again, that's like a 30 to 90 day protocol as well. And then after that, I'm going to make my recommendations based on your blood work and your stool test. But if you don't clean up the gut and you want to lose weight, good luck with that, right? It's just not, again, it's that fire in the basement, and we want to change light bulbs, which is the priority, right? The body's always going to go for the fire in the basement. So I think it's really important that everybody should be treated as individuals.
Yeah, love that. And then obviously that was the basis around your book that came out in 2022. Nice.
Yeah. So I wrote that book because, I poured everything I had into that book, because that's so much of what I saw. And growing up, I had so much diet confusion, and why is this not working? And why does this work? And I went on every single diet. I've never been over 7 pounds overweight, right, that I've ever had to lose. But, and I've always exercised and all that. So I really broke it down to what everybody should be eating. And that is pretty much works all the time. I've never seen it not work.
Yeah. It's sometimes it can be so simple, but for some individuals, it's difficult. Like, we talk about just eating whole foods, but I think just the environment and the way we live now, it's like there's so much thrown at you on every corner, right? That it's
Exactly.
all these temptations.
Exactly. It's and we have too many options and temptations.
Yeah. It's like it's funny, you go to the grocery store now or Whole Foods or whatever, and all you want is just like, I don't know. Let's say you just want to get milk and you got like 40 brands throwing like
Exactly.
8 different types of, oat, almond, this, that, vanilla. You're like, it can be, yeah, fairly confusing.
It's really, yeah. And if we just went back to basics, right? We have
Right.
all these foods made for convenience, but they really have not provided the convenience because we may save the time cooking it, but we're spending the time in the doctor's office or in the line at the prescription, for the pharmacy. So it really, same thing with computers. They've expedited so many things, but when it breaks, oh my God, it's crazy. And the aggravate, all that stuff. So we kind of take one step forward and two steps back in that regard for food, for sure.
Yeah. And I feel like at least the functional and holistic nutrition field is trying to get back to like just the basics of like, you hear like ancestral eating. But I think it's just another way of saying just eat like single ingredient foods that like our ancestors or like even like our parents or grandparents, but probably more like my grandparents would eat like, I don't know. I remember my grandfather had like tongue. Like, okay.
Yeah, exactly. My dad, it's crazy. Yeah. I was just in Paris and I saw tongue and I haven't seen that before for a very,
Right.
very long time. I never see it in the States. But I always say to people, eat foods that don't have an ingredient panel.
Yeah.
Just eat,
Done.
right. Done.
Done.
That's yeah.
And I noticed you have a course. Maybe we touch a little bit about thyroid health. Tell us a little bit about what went into this course and ways that we can optimize thyroid function.
Yeah. So as I mentioned, I had a long journey with thyroid issues and autoimmunity and a lot of questions, a lot of Googling, a lot of crying, a lot of frustration. And so I really wanted to give back to the world to take that frustration and crying and money and time and effort away, so that people could just take the course and know, oh, okay, this is what I need to do. And I think it's a good way to reach the masses because not everybody can work with me and I can't work with everybody either. So basically, I break down how the thyroid works. I break down the thyroid labs, what needs to be ordered, how to interpret it, what are optimal ranges. Unfortunately, our blood ranges at our labs are very misleading. We're really predicated to the norm, which is, we're a fat and sick country, and we are making that the norm. And so those ranges move according to what the population is. And so that's
Sure.
not ideal. That's not optimal. So I give optimal ranges. I talk about what foods to eat, what foods not to eat, what supplements to take, what supplements not to take. And I break down with hypothyroid, hyperthyroid, thyroidectomy, and both autoimmune Hashimoto's and Graves' disease. So everybody who's got thyroid issues can really benefit from it. And I everything I know, I put into that course, and I'm really proud of it. And I'm so grateful that it's helping so many people.
Yeah. And like one thing that I feel like comes up, especially probably maybe more with women, but could be with men, is not eating enough. Is this something or too much restriction? Because I think like, this whole diet, like, I don't even know, diet community or diet, just like everyone thinks they should just keep restricting. And then what's causing the issue or what's taking sort of the grunt of it is their thyroid and their hormones aren't performing. So is this something that you run into?
Yes, for sure. A lot of people come in with the intermittent fasting. That's like the new thing now is intermittent fasting. And it's great for a lot of reasons. If you have a blood sugar dysregulation issue, I'm for sure going to recommend intermittent fasting. If you have hypoglycemia, you are not a candidate for fasting.
Sure.
So, and calorie restriction is not, as you said, great for everyone. Of course, I don't think you should have a surplus of calories, but I think you should give your body the fuel that it needs. Think about if you took your car, if it took gas, if you took your car to the gas station and you filled it up halfway, you're going to have to keep going back to the gas station, right? Or you're going to have to pull from your storage unit, right? Your reserves. And that is a great effective way to lose weight. It's a great effective way to balance blood sugars. But if you don't have any storage and you don't need to lose weight, then that is not going to be good for you. So again, I put everything as I consider everyone as an individual. So it depends what your circumstances are. It depends what your symptoms are. And it depends what your labs look like.
Yeah. Yeah. Because it's like, you can only restrict so much, right? It's like, right. So like, you're seeing extreme like diets or end of the spectrums where you got like carnivore and then you have maybe like a vegan or vegetarian. And it's like, I think we have to sort of come back to maybe the middle ground. And, find it. If you have a healthy gut, you should be able to consume a lot of foods. Obviously, certain people are more sensitive to just, let's say, lectins and things like that, than other people. But if you have a healthy microbiome, I think you should be able to have a mixed diet.
Yeah. And the other thing is when you're eating whole foods, you're not as hungry as you usually are, because when you are eating processed foods or empty calorie foods, your body's going, okay, great. You just put shampoo in my gas tank, but I really need gas. So where's the gas? So you're just going to keep being hungry until you get nutrients that the body needs. But when you're eating those whole foods, you're really just not that as hungry. And if you have a lot of muscle, if you're working out a lot, you of course need more fuel. So it depends on what your lifestyle is and what you need, but we shouldn't be starving ourselves for sure.
Yeah. And what would you say some of your top tips are when it comes to improving health, like through diet? I know we've touched a little bit on them today, but what are some of the ones that stick out?
So for sure, I would take chemicals out. That's like a huge thing. Chemicals are just so destructive to everything, the endocrine system, but everything, really everything.
And when you say chemicals, you're talking like certain laundry detergents.
Yeah, fragrances.
Fragrances.
All the red dyes, all the dyes in your toothpaste. I won't mention brand names, but we know who they are. Look at the ingredients in your shampoos and your makeup. Makeup is huge. The average American female comes in contact with over 200 toxins just before she's left the bathroom each morning. 200 over. And if you read the labels of these nail polish and deodorant and makeup, and this is and then some people put permanent makeup on. It's crazy to me, right? And I see young girls having their hair dyed, at 10, 12 years old. It's insanity to me why you would do that. But anyway, so those are chemicals. But men's shaving cream and cologne is like the worst, right? And deodorant. So those are really very accessible toxins that just absorb into your body. And then they're in your food, right? So read your food, read your labels, and look at what's on your food to preserve it or to elongate its lifetime, right? So that is, what we're eating a lot. So the FDA has currently approved 86,000 chemicals, more than any other country on the planet. And we're approved anywhere from 2,000 to 6,000 a year, regardless of who's in the White House, right? Regardless. So we are getting an overload of chemicals. And so we can eat them, we can breathe them, and we can put them on our skin. So we absorb a lot of them. And what do you think happens with these toxins, right? So what I say is, like, imagine when you're going into a gated community, right? The lane that is for the visitors, they have the transponder, they go right through, right? That's the regular food, the real food that our body is actually built to eat. That goes right through the system. The body knows how to process that. Then there's the chemicals. These are the visitors. They got to wait for the guard. They got to get a pass. They got to get okayed. So the liver basically has to convert them into an enzyme that it knows what that looks like, so it can process it through the system. But a lot of them don't get through the system. They stay. They live in fat cells and fat tissues, and they compound, right? So you've got them, disrupting your head, your headaches, your skin, your weight gain, I can go on and on and on. It really affects everything. So you have to decrease your toxic load. That is going to be huge. Detox for sure, but decrease your toxic load. The second thing I would say is sugar. Sugar, we glean no nutrition from sugar. It is a what I call food for sport. And I know we all like food for sport. It's really good. It's really fun. And I don't take food for sport out completely, but when you're in an inflamed state, I'm going to put a hold on it. And once we get out of the inflammation state, we can absolutely eat for sport on occasion. On occasion, it's your birthday, it's Tuesday, and you just want chips and guac, or you're traveling, whatever it is, you make those exceptions. Just like you budget your money, you budget your time. We budget our food or our sporting food, right? And then sugar just makes us fat and sick and terrible. Like it's just awful. So there's lots of natural sweeteners that you can use. Allulose is my favorite one. I use that in my products, and I use it for baking. There's stevia and monk fruit. Those are kind of already in the market. I think people are familiar with those. But allulose is awesome. It comes from figs, raisins, or jackfruit. And it's minimally processed. We don't digest it, so we don't really have carbs or calories to it. It goes through the system, and it doesn't cause any damage, doesn't give you gastric upset. So it's basically a free food, and it's delicious. I love allulose, but I don't use it that much except for if I'm baking or something like that. But
Right.
that would be the two things. And then, lifestyle, right? Move your body, unplug, de-stress, have fun, laugh, meditate, whatever it is, get grounded, do, connect with people, that kind of stuff. Those are, the obvious ones.
Yeah.
And real food.
And what I like to talk about routines as we're closing up here soon, but what's like a typical routine for you, morning, evening, and also thoughts on alcohol and coffee?
Alcohol and coffee, everybody's addiction,
Yeah,
right?
right.
So there are some good properties to coffee. So I don't have an issue with coffee so much for people who don't have major adrenal issues. If you've got some cortisol dysregularity, then it's probably not good to have caffeine until you get that squared away. But as far as coffee is also concerned, it's a highly sprayed crop. So a great source of pesticides and herbicides, more toxins. So if you can really focus on getting organic coffee, and then usually it's what we put in the coffee. So, a lot of people put crap in their coffee. I would say take that out and put some coconut cream or macadamia nut milk or goat's milk or something clean with one ingredient, and use allulose if you need to sweeten it. Coffee and alcohol both block magnesium absorption. So make sure you're having some magnesium if you're having a lot of coffee and alcohol. Alcohol is what I call it. It's in my food for sport category, and it's fun, but it's not really a health food. Even that glass of red wine is not really a health food. You're going to get much more benefit from just taking resveratrol than you would drinking a bottle of wine. So it's, again, heavily sprayed crops. So you've got sulfates, and toxins. And so there are certain wines out there that are cleaner, but they do spike blood sugar levels. I'm a tequila drinker personally. So if I have a cocktail, it's going to be a tequila and soda. And that's usually what I do with muddled mint. And it's an occasional for me and not an everyday at all. So those are my thoughts on that. And people pretty much know when they're consuming too much of both, right?
Right. I feel like especially like caffeine or alcohol, like if you find that like you become reliant on it, then it's probably to the point of where you've just consuming it too much and too often.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. And as far as my routine is concerned, I go to bed pretty much the same time. I wake up around the same time. I move my body. It's, sometimes high impact, sometimes low impact. I love long walks, but I do a myriad of different things. And I usually have a shake pretty much almost every day, maybe 5-6 days a week. And then I eat lots of greens. There is no day in my life that goes without a big salad of some sort, because I just crave those green leafies, and we just get so much from them. And then protein, fat, and fiber.
Excellent. And evening routine, like you go to bed at the same time. Do you do any type of like sort of meditation or something to sort of calm? Yeah.
I don't.
Okay.
I have been trained in transcendental meditation, and
Cool.
I will meditate from time to time, but it is not part of my regular routine.
Okay.
Usually, when I feel really stressed or I've got a lot on my plate. But it's not. I do a lot of breathing. I'll do more breathing than I do meditation.
Yeah.
Um, and
Well,
that
and
works.
even going for walks is I feel like a form of meditation too.
Yeah, and I could walk for hours. So I love it. I'll put a podcast in, or I'll go for runs, and I'm always shaking it up.
Yeah. Well, this is great. Where can listeners like find you, and where do you keep most of your sort of information?
Yeah, on my website at Risa, Risa, last name is Groux, Groux, nutrition.com. So my class, my book, my detox, all my products. I've got tons of articles. You can take the FoodFrame quiz to see which kind of diet type is best for you. It's 12 questions. It's really easy. And all my social media, everything's risagrouxnutrition.com. Yeah. I work with people all over the country via Zoom, and I'm happy to work with people. Still
So
taking
work
patients.
with anyone all over. Yeah.
Yeah,
And then some people come to your practice.
yeah, exactly.
And this is just, does anyone ever say you look like Paul Abdul?
Yes, they
Okay.
do. I used to do some lookalike work for her back in the day.
Oh my
Yeah,
God. It just hit me like 10 minutes ago. And then I
yeah,
was like, yeah,
yeah. I used to get stopped on the street, and
especially
yeah,
being in LA.
yeah.
Or,
And I've been with her many times, and she's just really, really lovely, and
oh, that's
it's kind of
nice.
funny because we do look very much alike. Yeah,
Just thought I'd throw that out there. So if you're
yeah.
not watching on YouTube and you want to see a Paul Abdul lookalike, take a look. Well, Risa, this is great. We'll definitely put links in the show notes to find you, and if people want to reach out, that I think that'd be great because you're doing a lot
Yeah.
of great things. So,
Well, thank you so much for having me, Brian. Thanks for doing what you do.
no problem. Have a great rest of the day.
You too.
Thanks for listening to the Get Lean, Eat Clean podcast. I understand there are millions of other podcasts out there, and you've chosen to listen to mine, and I appreciate that. Check out the show notes at briangrin.com for everything that was mentioned in this episode. Feel free to subscribe to the podcast and share it with a friend or family member that's looking to get their body back to what it once was. Thanks again, and have a great day.